Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. Obviously, our clock on the wall is not, we're way behind, I think, we did, but it's 9 o'clock, and I will go ahead and call the Commissioners Court meeting to order. And today is Wednesday, June the 13th, 9 o'clock in the morning, and we do have a quorum present, so thank all of you for being here. Today we will begin here just in a moment with our invocation, but if there's anyone here that has an item that is listed on the agenda that you would like to address or speak to the court, there are some forms that you will need to fill out. I believe they're right there on the table, right there by the county clerk's area, and we'd be more than happy to hear you, but make sure you complete those forms and give them to us. So, thank you very much for being here. We'll begin now with our invocation, and Commissioner Allen will give that.
Father, we're grateful again just to be here in a country that's free, that we get to enjoy because people that have given their lives just for that privilege. We ask you to bless us this morning as we use the wisdom that you've given us, make the decisions that we need to for our county, and bless those who work each and every day to make this country free. Forgive us all of our sins. In Christ's name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In honor of the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We don't have any routine correspondence at this point, so we will move right on into the consent agenda. Item number A is to discuss and consider approving a deputation of Elsa Smith for the Kaufman County Clerk's office, and then item number B is to present the Star Transit's third quarter fiscal year 2018 demand and response. The Kaufman trolley, the link number 802, Terrell Highway 80, number 803, and Terrell Horseshoe, number 804, ridership reports, and both of those items have been included in your package. Anybody have any questions about any of those? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda.
So many.
Commissioner Allen makes that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Hunt. All in favor say aye. Those opposed. Next item is to discuss and accept the 2017 Kaufman County Annual Financial Report. We have John Manning with us this morning from our outside audit firm, and you had a copy of the information that the auditors have completed. And so, John, welcome. It's good to have you back again this year, and we're anxious to hear where we are financially.
Judge and Commissioners, thank you for letting me be
Is
here.
that mic on there? Yeah. Okay.
As Judge Wood stated, we're here again to present the FY17 annual financial report for Kaufman County. And if you've got two documents that you have. One is the actual financial statements. The other is a required letter. And if you look in the actual financial statements, there's only two letters in here that are ours. Although we do prepare the financial statements for the county, the responsibility for the financial statements rests with the county, and what we do is what we're talking about here in this letter. And we have offered an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which of the types of opinions that we can offer as outside auditors, the unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we can offer. So if you look at the second page of that letter, you'll see that opinion letter paragraph. And I know periodically that the county goes out for debt. You also apply for different types of grants. And one of the things that grantors look at is the opinion letter to make sure that there are no modifications to the opinion, and making sure that they know that the entity that they're looking to give money to has controls and has a financial system that will allow those grants to have a good chance to be spent properly. And that's what the county has. So although it's only a 3-page report, it is one of the places that outside users do look to see how the county's doing. If you look on page 4, there's a letter in here called the Management's Discussion and Analysis, and it's a word narrative of what has happened during the year. For those of us that don't look at financials all day like outside auditors do, it's really the only place anymore that has comparative information. And so if there's some things that you're unsure about that happened during the year, this is a place that I would look as it does go through and kind of narratively talk about what happened during the year. Karen and her guys do a really good job of making sure that a lot of the things that changed are presented here and explained in good standing. Also talks about on page 10, it talks about your different capital assets and your outstanding debt that the county has for outstanding at the end of the year. With that, if you'll look at page 13, statement of net position, this is essentially all of the funds that the county has combined into one column. And we also, on this set of financials, add the capital assets and the long-term liabilities. And the total net position is in a deficit of 2.7, but a lot of that has to do with the mobility bonds that have been issued, where the debt is on the county's books, but the assets that they're improving aren't highways and things that the county maintains. So essentially, you're helping transportation throughout the county on things that aren't county roads, all the state highway projects that you guys are involved with, the agreements that you're doing with Terrell and Kaufman. A lot of those roads, although they're within the county, they don't belong to the county. So the debt is there, but there is no asset to offset it. So we have a lot of counties now that are in these transportation type projects whose net asset positions are moving to this level, and yours isn't as high as a lot of the other counties that we have. So,
but with our next set of bonds that we do for them and pay money, then that number's gonna grow.
yeah. And it's growing all across the state. I mean, this is the way that these highway projects are being funded nowadays, and with the county kind of taking on the responsibility of helping fund some of that, you know, you're going to see a lot, especially up in the Metroplex area, you're going to start seeing where a lot of these capital asset numbers and unrestricted net positions are going down. But the key, and we'll get to it in a minute, is your general fund, the things that you operate on, where you use your tax funds to operate. That number went up. Yeah. This is predominantly looks this way because we put capital assets and debt.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing you have to remember, and I'll go over in a minute, is if you remember, I believe this is the third year that we've had to add that pension liability. Where
pension liability is pretty high.
Yeah, and again, it's high, but we have a lot of counties where that number's a lot bigger.
Right.
And really the only way that's ever going to affect the county, the only way that TCDRS affects your books is they say, Kaufman, we've assigned you a rate of 14.7%. And when y'all do that, y'all pay that hits your general fund, your road bridge where you pay people. That's the only place that really ever is going to affect the county. This liability is what we call an actuarial accrued liability, meaning they're using rules, but they're trying to estimate what they think you'll ultimately owe versus what you have set aside. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail just to show you how many estimates are involved in that number. But again, it is deficit, but it's very low compared to the amount of assets that you have. And I think that the users of the financials have always taken into account the fact that you've had that net pension liability, as those numbers have always been in the report. Just up until 3 years ago, they never have had them been recorded. But with that, if you look on page 15, on a better note, general fund balance is just a shade under $5 million now. If you remember several years ago, that number was, I believe, in a deficit position or pretty close.
1.2.
Red.
Yeah, I remember.
And so I know a lot of tough decisions have been made, and so I wanted to applaud all the county departments because they're all involved in making sure that number went up. But it's getting up to an amount that's a lot safer and a lot more fiscally responsible and prudent. But again, your general road and bridge fund balances there are in good shape, and your construction projects, you're going to see that number is about 26.5 as you continue to do these projects. That number is going to go down with the issuance of debt, and you turn around and use that money for the projects that the debt was issued for.
And it always has, remember this, audit through September of 2017.
17, yes, sir. So it went down about $5 million this year, because that's about the amount that y'all spent this year on projects. Because the only income that's really going in there is some intergovernmental money and interest that you're earning off the proceeds from the bonds that are sitting there in the bank. So if you look at page 18, property taxes, as you know, if you look around, the area is really growing, and assessed values went up, and that brought in more tax revenue for the year. Doing a good job of trying to collect on your tickets, outstanding fines. So your charges for services were about 1.3, fees of office were about $4 million. So again, fund balance last year was about 2.4, and it's up to almost $5 million. So, you know, GFOA, who looks at these things all the time, recommends trying to have a reserve of about 3 months. So we're getting a little bit closer to that. Is we've talked about this before. I mean, you can get fund balance negative very, very quickly, but trying to get it back positive is a long process. So I applaud again the fact that y'all did that. And if you look on page 19 and 18, the general fund, the general road and bridge and construction projects are the only funds that meet the major fund criteria. All the other funds that y'all see, the records management, some of your grant funds, all of those are combined into another non-major governmental funds column presented there in accordance with GAAP. But if you page 22 starts the notes to the financial statements and talks about, you have about $30 million in tech school. It just kind of goes through and does like the MD&A, breaks down a lot of things that happened throughout the year. And I'd like to go on page 35. And two of the unique, you really have, and it's going to get bigger because of a new accounting standard that's coming out, but you have two $6.7 million liabilities that you really will never essentially have to write a check for. And those are your OPEB obligation, which is your post-retirement insurance benefits for retirees, and the net pension liability that we talked about earlier. What we've been having to book so far on the OPEB is just what they call the unfunded accrued liability. Now we're going to have to do like we did with the pensions and put the full unfunded actuarial accrued liabilities on. So that's another one. The thing with these that really hurt net assets is they're a liability with nothing offsetting them. Essentially, normally what happens is you issue bonds and you build a building. So you get a building and you get debt, and as you depreciate and pay off the debt, they kind of offset each other so they don't really hit the bottom line. But these have nothing to offset them. And just to kind of go over, if you took those two out, overall debt went down. But because of these things that have nothing to do with really what you're doing, they went up. So, your overall debt went up, but not on things that you'll have to pay. And I'd like to point out, just take a look at page 42. Kind of shows you up there at the top, your total pension liability, the actual liability went from 71 to 77 million. There on that first column with the A. And then the money that that the county and the employees have been sending in since inception of the plan, those went from 65 to 70 million, which leaves your net pension liability at about 6.7. Now remember, as Judge mentioned earlier, this report is as of 9/30/17, but even to make it more confusing, this measurement date that we're using for the pension liability is 12/31/16, because they can't get the 17 numbers done in enough time for us to be able to use that. So we're always in a lag, and if you remember, I really anticipate your plan assets to really go up, because if you remember, 17 was a really good year in the market. So your monies that you've had setting aside there at TCDRS should grow a lot more than they did in 16, and the liability should stay pretty constant as you're not adding 20 or 30 employees. I mean, you add a few here and there, but for the most part, your payroll and the amount of people that you have generally stays there. But the one thing I'd like to point out is if you look down on page 42, in the sensitivity analysis, when we talk about this, is that there's a lot of assumptions built in. One of the things is that they say that they feel you're going to get a discount rate of 8.1, and that's what they use. If they were to use 9.1, just 1% difference, instead of having a $6.7 million liability, you'd be overfunded by $2 million. A huge difference. And then on the flip side, if they were to use 7 instead of 8, your liability would be $17.3 million.
Yeah, that can happen in 2 years.
Yeah. So I'm just pointing that out, that we do have to make sure that the county accrues that number. But I just want to stress that when you look at this, this isn't like you went out and issued a bunch of debt and are being irresponsible. This is just a number that has to go on here, and it's always really far behind of where the financials are. So there's a lot of things that go into this number being a big number, but with not really a whole lot of things that the county can do to control it. So, again, a lot of estimates involved in that number, but the debt that you can control went down during fiscal year 17.
That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is. The rest of the report is combining statements, some of the non-major funds, and then we also, because the county is a local government, we have to do audit under government auditing standards, and if you remember 4 or 5 years ago, we had quite a few findings in here for things that weren't being done properly. We've worked with the county, and the county auditor's office has done a lot. The different departments have done a lot to get those things done, and we don't have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report to the court at this time. I do know a lot of things are being done to make things better. You know, you also try to change the way you do your interlocal agreements, making sure they all get approved and having contracts drawn up. So I applaud any of that kind of those kind of things that you can do to increase controls, really help with transparency and making sure that monies are getting spent where they should be.
And basically what we're doing, we're requiring them to put the cash up front before we do the work.
Yes. And with an agreed upon price that's been looked at by more than just the commissioner, or more than just, it's been looked at by I think the district attorney's office gets involved and make sure the agreements are there.
Right.
So we really applaud the county stepping up and working with local governments to make sure that those are more open and more transparent and have a lot more control than they did in the past. And I know that's it takes some extra work on a lot of different departments, but we appreciate that y'all did that. It makes our job easier, I can tell you.
John, can we go back to page 37?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else has got a laptop at the commissioner. I don't know what that means, but if you would, we've made a concerted effort this last year on the loans payable, and particularly on the one there on the EOC and the 911 dispatch center. This last year, we made, in addition to the principal that was due of $399,000.
So you're talking about an FY18?
Yeah, FY18.
Yes, sir.
We've gone ahead and added an additional $750,000 to that to pay down that debt. And that's what we're planning on doing this next fiscal year as well, while we're in the middle of the
Budget season.
That'll be.
That'll make that liability go down significantly.
2.25% loan, so it's a very cheap loan, but the more we can knock that down, the better it is. So I don't know whether you were aware of that or not.
No, we talked about that when we went over the draft of the report. I was pretty much focusing on what happened in 17, but it's a good point to bring up that you're paying additional down on that.
Okay.
But again,
I'm proud of that.
no, that's excellent. And the fund balance growth, I mean, a lot of times we have counties that we go to that are in that similar position, but don't kind of come together and sit down and make the tough decisions to try to get that fund balance back up, and y'all have done it. And, you know, we're in a lot better position with as far as findings and with how you are financially. So I just wanted to make sure that we point that out and let people know that you know, there was an issue and that you guys have, whole county has kind of stepped up and made sure it was right.
I don't believe there were any findings last year, or were there?
Just the second year, yeah.
auditor's office has not been found to be, or the county's not been.
And it's not just the auditor's
Yeah,
office, it's every, yeah, because some of those findings had to do with treasurer's office.
Right.
I think there was some, maybe something with the tax assessor collector, just some different things throughout the county, so.
I remember, Karen, there were, how many was it? There was about
16 or 17.
16 or 17 findings that now we have 0. So that's a pretty powerful statement.
Right. And it's easy, one thing that we're proud of too is that it's easy for us just to point them out and just say here, but a lot of places don't go through and try to fix those. And what we look at is when we do have a finding, I mean, our job is to bring them out, but also we feel that our job is to try to help
Yeah,
come up with a solution, because a lot of the times, once the county was aware of what happened, especially with Karen and her group, they would say, okay, how can we fix this? And a lot of times, by the time we came with the final report, the problem had already been solved and was already being addressed already. So that's one of the reasons why we went from, like you said, double-digit findings down to none. Yeah, and I mean, if you talk to, we went out to. We're still going out to the places that collect cash. We're still pulling a lot of invoices, you know, with making sure that policies are being followed. And it's not from lack of trying, it's just that I think that a lot of people took those findings to heart, increased controls, and have done a lot to make sure that there aren't any findings. So, and again, you know, like I said before, like it says in this report, we give reasonable assurance, and we can't offer absolute, because in order to do that, we'd have to be here pretty much year-round, and audit fees would be astronomical, and, you know, we've looked at enough and followed standards to feel comfortable with issuing the opinion. So a lot of work's went into it on our part and the county's part.
Is that it?
Is that for me?
Anybody have any questions of John?
Last year you mentioned we should try and shoot for our fund balance at least up from what it was last year. And we should be setting, or need to be at least 3 months, is that correct?
That's what people recommend, and financial advisors and things like that, and that's because counties that don't have that reserve, and you guys have been involved with that. If you have a FEMA disaster or some kind of emergency, if you have no reserves, the only way to address that stuff is to go out and get short-term financing. And I think a lot of people that don't look at financials or have run a county, they look at fund balance and say, well, you just collected tax money, you're just holding it to have this reserve, and that's not what it's for, because 90% of the revenue for the county comes in by the end of January. You've got February through September to make payrolls, buy road materials, buy all those different things, and a lot of the big dollars have come in and stopped in January. So you have to have that fund balance there in order to, if you just got the same amount of revenue and the same amount of expenditures every year, then there would be no need for fund balance, but it doesn't work that way.
The bad news is, you don't have a good fund balance, you have a hard time making it from
Well, we don't
the
want
last
a
3
situation
months of the year,
4 years ago.
because nobody pays the tax until January.
Exactly.
I like to see our fund balance about 6 months. Get there. Judge Strickland is on the coast when the hurricane hit last year. They did have a year's fund balance. And he said, had it not been for that, they'd be in dire straits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty tough to do though.
Yeah, but there's a lot of counties.
But you can do it, you can do it, it just takes a long time to do that.
Yeah, I think if you, you know, and you had some things this year, like you got those proceeds from, that road damage that y'all had the lawsuit, and there's some things like this, some one-time things. But I think if you generally keep moving in that direction, you can move into the position that Mr. Allen's talking about, a higher fund balance. So once it gets to a point, that's kind of up to y'all and your constituents to see what that number needs to be. But
the economy
it definitely
down,
needs,
so
definitely needs to be.
sooner he's gonna.
Like I said, I've applauded what y'all done, but it, you know, it can still be higher.
More savings you have, the better off you always
Yeah.
are.
Just like at the house.
That's right. It doesn't change.
Genie Pal for debt.
And Judge Wood mentioned earlier, you doing some extra on that too, so it's good.
We're working on that hard.
Good.
Other questions for John?
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much, I appreciate it.
Just like to say again, thanks to Karen and her office and all of the different elected officials that are here and department heads that have worked to bring us to the point where we are today. And this is, I believe, the highest fund balance in the general fund we've had in over 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. And in fact, maybe 12 years, but I had that at one time. But that's a much better position than where we were. So.
And we would like to reiterate that too, working with Karen and Kate, they do a super job and have really made the audit a lot easier process for us, so we appreciate their help as well.
Okay, gentlemen, if you don't have any other questions, do I have a motion to accept the outside audit report? I have a motion from Commissioner Phillips. Do I have a second? Commissioner Barber seconds the motion. All in favor say aye. Those opposed. Thank you guys very much. Well, I think they kind of wanted to stay there, I believe. Is that what you indicated?
You know, us attorneys prefer to hold on. I'm fine.
Okay, well, we can visit, you know. So. All right, item number 4 is to discuss and consider approving purchase of body cam equipment for Constable Precincts 3 office to be used for participation and administration of the pretrial intervention program for eligible, I'm right where I need to be, yeah. For eligible defendants pursuant to Texas Code Criminal Procedure Act 102.0121. A lot of numbers.
So Constable Stevens approached my boss and wanted to use some of the funds that we use for our pretrial intervention program. In order to do that, we have to request that permission from you guys, and so this line item does that.
Yeah, this is on body cameras. Okay, currently have 2. I've got 4 officers that work there. This is over and above the 2 that I asked for in my budget. Those other 2 will be backups in case one gets broke or something, or when the deputy's camera's full, all they gotta do is come in and put it in the docking station, pick up a new one, and they're back on the road again. So we're just asking for approval on that through the DA's office.
I'll make one.
Okay, nice. Pretty good deal for us.
Yep.
Public as well.
Good deal.
Have a motion from Commissioner Phillips. Do I have a second? Commissioner Barber seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed. Good deal. Thank you, sir. Appreciate working with the DA's office to get that done. Next item is to discuss and consider a contract and agreement between Kaufman County and the Department of State Health Services Vital Statistics Department to access the DSHS Vital Event Electronic Registration System pending the DSHS's approval of changes. That's a
Basically what it is it's a contract for us to have a state computer in our office that allows us to print birth certificates for all of Texas. So that way citizens do not have to go back to the county where they were born. They can come to the county clerk's office and get it. But we do have to have the contract in place, and we renew it, I believe, every 2 years. Yes. So this year the contract is a little different, and Judge, I got Annabella edited one for you because at the last minute we had to do some edits to the new contract. So we're asking that you approve this contract pending the approval from them of the edits. And the county gets basically $20 per birth certificate, and the state gets like $1.80. So it's rather
reverse roles and stuff. We did it nice.
Yeah. So, how many requests
5
do
years,
you?
I'm sorry, 5 years.
Do you also? Do we have a lot of people come in and request birth certificates from?
A lot, and a lot of them are from all over. I mean, they're, you know.
We get quite a bit. I requested one here a few years ago, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, okay.
And we're getting a lot more because Terrell doesn't issue the birth certificates anymore. They've all come through our office now. So we've seen an increase in that because they used to be able to go to Terrell. And when they went to Terrell, they had to wait and go back 24 hours later. But with us, we print it right while they wait.
Good.
And it's a pretty long, pretty detailed contract. And I know, Rebecca, I think you and Karen, or you, or both of you, been working on that.
Miss Hughes had a meeting this morning. She asked me to come with the lead But yeah, her office and ours worked a lot of time on these 3 contracts, and there are really only just a few changes on the second document, and the department said that they probably will have no problem getting them passed, so I just went ahead and put them in your contract so you can sign that one with the changes.
Okay.
But
Anybody have any questions?
No.
That's good. I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Allen makes the motion to approve, second, and Commissioner Hunt seconds the motion. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed.
Thank you.
The next item is item number 6, and it is to discuss and consider continuing an agreement with the regional public defenders for capital cases and paying the invoice. I've talked with the judges and the 2 district judges, and we do have, this is a group that we've been a part of since 2013, I believe, when it first started. And they have sent us the information. Our fee is exactly the same, I believe, $65,000, which is very, I mean, that's a good fee for us, and hopefully we'll never have any more capital murder trials. We had those 2 that you recall, and they're very expensive. But we're at the point now, we've asked the chief, the executive director of this group to come to the county and talk with the judges and other interested individuals that might want to attend. We had some very exorbitant expert witness fees, and I'm talking about a lot of money that we spent that is not covered by this. And so I think what I would ask, and Karen, were y'all in the meeting, Karen, or you were? Yes.
I was not in the meeting, but I talked in detail with our boss about the agreement, and she just wanted to request that you guys consider your options and then meet with the director so that you can ask him detailed questions. And as far as the contract goes, we have 180-day notice period, so it's about 6 months out. So because we're going into the budget cycle, we're at that point where we need to make that consideration if we're looking at going a different way.
Okay. And so we've got this number plugged in the budget, you know, to have it. But there are some questions, I think, that need to be answered by this group, particularly on the extraneous costs that went along with the 2 murder cases we have. So I don't think we need to take any action. We've got to consider on here, but right now, since the contract is not up for a few more months, I would suggest we just table this and then let us come back and approve it, or whatever we decide to do with it. And we're not saying we're not going to do it, it's just we need some more information. So if you would consider a motion to table that from somebody.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table this item, because we discussed it a long time yesterday, and I totally agree that all the extra fees would pay off charge. So, right, let's table it to meeting, maybe we'll be able to put a cap on it.
I called the office yesterday, and their executive director's on vacation this week, and I'm sure he'll be getting back next week, and he or someone from this group will come to the county. But we have a motion from Commissioner Phillips. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Barber. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. And then the next item is misspelled word here, not, but I'll point that out to you. To discuss and consider entering into an agreement with Fire Troll Protection Services, not Fortro, Protection Services for fire equipment testing and inspection at the Kaufman County Law Enforcement Center using the TexMAS contract number 17-03 FAC04. Lisa, I believe you have that information.
Yes, sir. This was brought to me by Sheriff Beavers. I believe you gentlemen were provided with a copy of the contract. The DA's office has reviewed. They have requested a few changes, which Fire Patrol has accepted the changes. I don't believe you have the revised copy yet, but, this is, necessary, this is what's necessary to keep them in compliance with the jail standards, to have all of their equipment tested on a regular basis and corrections if needed.
And so this is part of one of the, one of the groups. that we
Under Texas Mass, yes,
purchased
sir.
with, so, okay. Anybody have any questions?
Make a motion.
Have a motion from Commissioner Allen, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Hunt, not Hunter. Commissioner Hunt. Seconds motion, any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Thank you very much. And the next item is to discuss and consider a settlement agreement with Mr. Bobby Edwards for damages to County Road 124 and 125 and place in road materials account 021.3310.601. And,
Basically, we had someone that was, driving heavy equipment down the roads that damaged, and we just reached a settlement and proper charges. So,
and those pictures, I think.
yeah, the pictures and everything are in here. It just, you know, I mean, our roads, some of our roads aren't the best roads, but still we don't need to be give them free will to tear them up.
Right.
You know, even further, so.
So you have to fix the base, whether it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Clean that down.
Yeah, so the heavy equipment really does a lot of damage, and I want to applaud the sheriff's department and the DA's office for helping us get something done here. And, so, again, we just need to make a statement that, you know, they just need to put them on a train to remove it.
Okay, anybody have any questions? No? Commissioner, do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the settlement agreement.
Commissioner Hunt puts that in, places that in a motion. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Barber. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed. Item number 9.
I have a question. Is this the one that we already settled with?
I guess we settled with them
Okay.
this week, earlier this week.
I'll fix the line item, that's the wrong line item. We have to amend the budget and increase this expenditure, we can't just put it in there.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't additional.
Okay, I just would like to get the money back in there, I can spend it on materials.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will do.
All right. The next item is to discuss and consider approving an interlocal and project agreement with the City of Combine for Circle Drive in Kaufman County Precinct number 4. Commissioner, I believe you have that in.
That's fine, we've already, we did one for them last year, we'll do another one this year. The amount, may change if they so choose to do something different, but it'll be toward the end of the summer before it's completed. Standard interlocal amount, like a motion, except
We have an interlocal and a project agreement.
project agreement, yes.
All right. Anybody have any questions? I believe we have a motion from Commissioner Allen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Phillips. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. If you'll turn to the next page, I'm going to take a couple of items before we go into the executive session. If you'll move down to item number 14, we'll go ahead and get these items done before we go into our closed session. That would be to discuss and consider approving payroll and benefits.
Your payroll amount is $1,157,151.51.
Okay, and we have copies of that, I believe, that shows that information. Anybody have any questions?
No, I'll make a
Alice,
motion to approve payroll.
Commissioner, who did?
I did.
You did, okay. Having to look back and forth, a little while.
It's good exercise.
It is. Commissioner Phillips made the motion, and Commissioner Barber seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, next item is number 15, and that is to discuss and consider line item transfers.
These were emailed to you earlier during the week. Are there any questions?
Nope.
Okay, anybody have any questions, or do I have a motion to approve?
So made.
Commissioner Allen makes that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Hunt seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Item number 16 is now to discuss and consider claims for payment.
Claims for payment are $690,397.85.
And we've also received copies of that on our email, and so anybody have any questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the claims for payment.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Barber makes that motion. Do I have a second?
Have a second.
Second from Commissioner Allen. All in favor say aye. The next item, we're gonna take a quick break. Let me go ahead and read this. I do need a motion to exit this regular meeting and entering into an executive session. All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Barber, and I'm gonna note the time is at 9:39 a.m. And do I have a second?
Second.
And who?
I did.
Philip seconds. All in favor say aye. Okay. And now let me go ahead and read the reason we're going into the closed session. And due to our new courtroom, you guys can just sit here and enjoy the comfort of the chairs. And we're gonna go into the comfort, and we don't have very good chairs in there, so we're gonna go in the next door. And you can,
None in there. Everybody's gonna have to leave.
well, that's a heck of a note. I don't have anybody from maintenance here. We will, I don't think we'll be in executive session very long.
Not too long.
Okay, so I'm sorry if you, let me read this, and then we'll ask the audience to leave except for the district attorney's folks. This executive session is pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code. The Commissioners Court will meet in closed session to consider pending or contemplating litigation subjects or settlement offers. The following cases subject may be discussed: Kaufman County, Texas versus Rock Solid Crushed Stone Incorporated and Bobby C. Pancook Jr. File calls number 982-63186, Kaufman County, Texas versus Jimmy Davis and the Texas Workforce Commission. January the 1st, 2017, Anita Reka versus Kaufman County and Kaufman County Supervision and Corrections Department. File 318, case number CV-00264-C, claim of Carl Laird Jr. against Kaufman County, Texas. So that is the items we'll be considering. And so if you now will exit the room, and we'll make sure we get some chairs in our new conference room this session. Commissioner Barber makes the motion and Commissioner Phillips seconds. And please note that the time is, what did I say?
It's 10:27.
Well, I mean, Philip, did you second?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, or y'all would say.
We're not arguing with you.
Well, I just, you
You're good.
Okay, we're hitting the salt.
snickered or something, I thought, well. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. All righty, on item number 13, do I have any motion? Don't believe there's no action to take, so we will, it was an update on these various items that were listed. And I believe that's all we have. I need a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Phillips will make a motion.
Phillips makes a motion.
I second.
And
Commissioner Allen.
Allen
Take a
seconds.
second.
All in favor say aye. Thank you very much.
Sir, we didn't vote on adjourning. We didn't adjourn, vote to adjourn. Annabelle didn't get it either. We got, no action taken.
Phillips and Allen,
To adjourn.
who adjourned.
Commissioner
He
Phillips.
made the motion, I seconded the motion. So we all voted to say aye.
That's on no action taken in executive session.
No, they said,
Adjourn,
they said adjourn to adjourn.
I heard him adjourn.
yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
who voted
remember
on
when he
no
said
action
Commissioner
taken?
Phillips makes the motion to adjourn?
First you said there's no action to take.
Okay. Got it.
And then after that, Commissioner Phillips said the words, Commissioner Phillips makes the motion.
It will,